you know. That's where I first met Billy Joe Shaver. I, I was playing there, and all of a sudden Bill Simmons comes and says, "Ray, I want you to meet this great songwriter." So I go to the table, and this guy's sitting there, and all of a sudden Bill goes, "Ray, this is Billy Joe. Billy Joe, this is Ray Wylie." And then Billy Joe looks up and he says, "I just took some LSD, and I need about a half inch more." You know, he didn't need another tab or anything like. I just need a half inch more. That's the first thing he said to me. Well, I mean, besides having these incredible songs, you know, that he was ornery, you know, in a way, in a good way. I mean, he was, and sometimes not in a good way, but he was just always gracious to me, man. He was, you know, like we'd play these gigs. I'd get a gig opening for him, right? He'd call me up and say, "Hubbard, I'm older than you. I'm going on first. I want to go home." You know, so we'd play these gigs, and he'd go on, and then I'd have to close the night. And I'll tell you, so one time, so Pat Green called me. So I'm doing a song swap, you know, with you, Billy Joe Shaver, Corey Mora, and me at this radio station that had a Hills Cafe or something. So we get there, so I'm like, you know, I'll do sound, so I'm first, and Billy Joe, then Corey, then Pat. That's why we set up the sound check. So we get there. So it's about 8 o'clock, and Billy Joe's walking around, and they said, "Well, when are we going to start?" You know, it's like 8:05. And he said, "What time will start? I got to get home." They said, "Well, Pat and Corey out on their bus." And Billy Joe says, "Well, I'm going on." And he walks out there. So I'm just kind of standing there. And so everybody, I hear this applause. So I walk out and I sit down there. Then all of a sudden, Pat and Corey come out. I guess somebody went and told them, said Billy Joe's out there doing the deal. So anyhow, we do this song swap, right? And so we've been up there doing it. So I, you know, started off, then Billy Joe, then Corey, then Pat. So we do this thing. So I've been up there about an hour and a half. So Pat says, "We're going to do one more song apiece. But, you know, thank y'all for coming out." So it comes to me, and I do my song, and I look over at Billy Joe, and I said, "Billy Joe, you been paid yet?" He goes, "No." And I go, "Well, I have." Yeah, well, so that's one of our gigs. But no, but Billy Joe, he was just always just a great cat. I mean, we played Antone's one time, and he left because he went on first, and we were up there getting paid and everything, and all of a sudden we went over the doors, so the guy's giving me the guarantee plus a back end, right? And all of a sudden Judy's getting the deal and says, "Well, you know, what about Billy Joe's back end?" I said, "Well, he left." And I said, "Well," she said, "Well, give it to me." So then she sent it to Billy Joe, you know, said, "Hey, you left before you got this extra $600-700, you know." So Billy Joe would always email Judy and thank her about that, and said, "You're, you know, you're my family now." And then I get, you know, he'd always text me just different messages, you know, and I still got a bunch of his texts on my phone, you know.
Were they colorful?
Well, well, he'd he'd send me a text in all capital letters, you know. "I'm surrounded by assassins," you know, and "God bless you, Ray. I'm praying for you. Give them hell," you know, just, you know, and but he meant the world to me, you know. He really did. Well, you know, Billy Joe had this idea in his head, and he would follow through. I mean, you know, he had his heart attack on stage at Green Hall, you know, and then I think he went off and did that, but then he would drink 2 Red Bulls before he go on stage, even after the fact, you know, and you go, "Billy, you know, just," but he would, you know, headstrong. I mean, you gotta, he was, you know, and he anybody's willing to fight Waylon Jennings with a couple of biker guys there in the hallway. I mean, you gotta, you know, he would do things not thinking about the future of what he did or what he said.
You said Waylon. Were you around Waylon much?
Well, not a lot. We did a show at out in California, out near Santa Cruz, and this is back when I had the Gonzos playing with me, and we played this festival. We played pretty early in the day because we had another gig that night, I think at K-Pig Radio or something. And so we get there, and we play, and we're got this funky old bus. We're just waiting around. So Will Bird, who was Waylon's road manager for a while, I think later he went to work with Springsteen or somebody, but I'm not sure. So he comes in and goes, "What are you still doing here? I thought you had another gig." And I said, "Man, we're waiting to get paid." He goes, "Really?" So he leaves, and all of a sudden the promoter comes over, and about 15 minutes later, with a girl carrying a tray from a concession stand, he starts paying us like in 20s and 10s and 1s, and then rolls of quarters, you know. He said, "Here's your money." And we go, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, Waylon found, said he wasn't going to go on until you got paid. If I didn't pay you the next 15 minutes, he wasn't going to go on." So that was, very gracious. Now, times I always hung around him, he was really nice. I didn't know him, that well, but the time we hung around, he was always, "Hey, Hoss," and because he probably couldn't remember my name. I called everybody Hoss. But, so like I say, I didn't hang around him a lot, but I do remember that he was just, because of him, we got paid.
Like, did he draw really well in
Oh, yeah.
Texas gigs?
Oh, yeah, man. Bob Wills is still the king. I mean, one of his best friends is Willie Nelson. Also said, "Willie's not the king, Bob Wills is." Yeah, he got Headstrong comes up and thinking about him, too. But, yeah, he played some great shows here. But now I understand when he played Lukenbach, Willie Nelson's 4th of July picnic. So, we were down there. We played early, but we hung around. So everybody's excited. Waylon's here. It's in Lukenbach, the guy who sang Lukenbach, Texas. Whoa, this is going to be great. And they had like a key. "Welcome, Waylon. Here's the key to the township of Lukenbach." And he gets up there and he doesn't do Lukenbach. And so everybody, well, he didn't, and so finally then Willie closed it out. So Willie's up there and he says, "Bring Willin back." And everybody's, "Oh, man, this is it." And all of a sudden he walks out and he goes, "Mamas don't let your babies grow up." He walks off. Never sang Lukenbach in Lukenbach, Texas, man. Yeah, man.
That's half of why people like cats like that.
Well, yeah, I think he walked out of Wheel of the World too, didn't he? You went the Wheel of the World.
That's right.
The big thing. He just,
on that documentary.
Yeah. But he always treated me really, really nice, and he had me send him some songs, and he never cut them or anything, but he told me he liked them. So, I actually introduced John Prine to Willie Nelson. We were the Los Gonzos. We were coming back and played the Palomino or someplace. And we're driving my old bus, and Bob and John and Paul are asleep. I remember the bus driver, and all of a sudden we're coming on 10. It says Las Vegas, 114 miles. I go, "Gary Mack, let's go to Vegas." So we driving down Sunset Strip, and all of a sudden John and Paul wake up and go, "What are we doing here?" And I go, "Man, we're in Vegas." All of a sudden I see Pootie walking across the parking lot. And I go, "Open the door." We could open the door while we were driving. "Pootie, yeah, Wilster." Willie's playing Caesar's Palace or Circus. I can't remember. I think it was Caesar's Palace. It might have been Circus. I can't remember. So anyhow, I said, "What are y'all doing?" "Oh, we're just going." "Well, come on, we'll get you some rooms." So he gets us some rooms. We're just hanging out, and all of a sudden I'm walking through, and all of a sudden I hear this Ray Wylie, and turn around, it's Steve Goodman. He goes, "Hubbard, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, man, we're coming back from Vegas." And because I'd done a folk festival with him. I can't remember which one it was. So he said, "Hey, this is John Prine." I go, "Oh, John, how you doing?" Everything. "Yeah," I said, "We were hoping to see if we could get some tickets to see Willie." I said, I'm opening for Steve Martin over at some other hotel." And I said, "Well, come on, let's go," because Willie was doing his sound check. So we grabbed Pootie and go through the kitchen, and Willie comes over and said, "Willie, this is Steve Goodman and John Prine." He goes, "Yeah, I meet them and everything." And so then Steve invites us over to the Sands or wherever Steve Martin was playing, where he was opening up. So we have a booth there, and I mean, they got us a booth and everything, and got to see him. And he really, that crowd there really wasn't aware of Steve Goodman at the time, you know. But so it would, but got to go over and do that. So but yeah, and then I did the Philadelphia Folk Festival with John, and played went on right before he went on, and so yeah, but I didn't know him about maybe 2 or 3 times we'd cross paths.
Were you aware of his music when you first met him?
No, well, yeah, I was. I knew who he was, you know, and I knew, of course, Steve Goodman, but you know, it's before Willie did train in New Orleans and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I was very aware of him. You know, that first album, who wasn't? You know, yeah, it was just you just get it and flip it over and play it, and flip it over again and play it, keep going. Yeah. He was really, you know, when I opened for him at Philadelphia, it was just, I was just doing a solo thing, and he just came over and hung out beside the stage, watched me play, and said he, you know, liked what I was doing, you know. And I reminded him, I said, do you remember when I introduced you to Willie Nelson? He goes, yeah, you know, like he remembered meeting Willie. I don't know if he remembered it was me or not, but he was nice because he pretended to know who I was. It was, you know, I remember it was cool being that close backstage, watching him from behind. He had the band that wore suits, you know. Yeah, I can't remember those guys, but they were great.